Now let's look at configuring our IPv4 ACLs that are standard. Keep in mind that when your traffic comes into your router, it is compared to all the access control entries inside of your access control list in the order that they are in the list. So it's not going to come to it and go to the last one or the middle one. It's going to start at your first entry and it's going to work its way through until it finds a match. Once it finds a match, that's the one it works off of. If it finds no matches, then the packet is denied, because keep in mind that it is implied that it's a deny if nothing is met. With that being said, with it being implicit deny, you have to have at least one permit entry in your access control list. If you don't, then everything is denied for that network or into that interface. So let's look at the process. Here we have an example of an access list that is going to the interface gigabit 00. Okay, the first entry in our list tells us that we're going to deny the IP address 192.168.10.10. So if it meets that requirement, then it's denied because we have a deny statement. Our next entry is a permit for the network of 192.168.10.0 and anything in that 24-bit network, except for the 1010, because remember, if it hit it first, then it's automatically denied and it has dealt with that packet. So if it meets the requirements and it's on that network, the 192.168.10.0 network, other than the .10, it is permitted. Okay, if it's not, then it's going to go to the next entry in your control list, and it's going to deny the network 192.168.0.0. Okay, so if it meets that requirement, then it's going to deny it. However, if it does not meet that requirement, it's going to go to your next entry in there, and it's going to permit anything in the 192.0.0.0 network. Okay, now if it didn't meet any of those requirements, then it's going to deny them, because remember, it's an implied denied if it doesn't meet the entries in your access control list. Alright, let's get ready to configure our standard IPv4 ACLs. So you have your access list number, and remember, that is a number from 1 to 99 or 1300 to 1999 for standards. You have either the deny, which denies access if the conditions are met, or permit, and that permits access if the conditions are met. Then you can have your remark, and your remark is just like when you create your interface and you go in and you put a description. The remark acts the same way. You're going to give a description of what your access list is going to do. Then you have your source, and that number of the network or the host from the packet is being sent. You can either have the 32-bit quantity in 4-part with the dotted decimal. You can use the word any as an abbreviation for a source, and source wildcard of quad 0, quad 255. Okay, then you can have your source wildcard, and that's optional. Then you have your log, that's also optional, and that causes an information logging message about the packet that matches the entry to be sent to the console. Okay, so we can look here and we see that access list 10, we've got permit. Remember, here we're going to have the deny, the permit, or the remark. Then we see the network, and then we typed exit. And when you do show access list, you see that you have access list 10. So 10 permits this network with this wildcard bit. To take the access list out, you just simply put no access list and the list number in front of it. Now we can do the remarks, and it's just simply access list, your access list number, remark, and then give a description of what this access list is going to do. This one tells me it's going to permit host from the 192.168.10.0 LAN. So it kind of helps. The more remarks and descriptions you can put in, It's very similar to when you're programming. The more descriptions and remarks that you can put in helps whoever comes along behind you know what was going on. It also helps you remember what it was you did when you set the access control list up. Now, with your control list in IPv4, you can have conflict with your statements. Here we've tried to set up an ACL 3, and it tells us that the access rule can't be configured at a higher sequence number, as it is part of an existing rule as sequence number 10. So your access list 10 already had information that appeared before access list 3, so it's not going to be able to be processed. Here, our host statement can always be configured before our range statement. So this is allowing just this host instead of an entire range. See here, this one was trying to permit a host after the range. And then the host statement can be configured after the range statement if it's not in conflict. This particular host is not part of this range. So our steps are going to, for configuring our ACLs is step 1, you're going to use the access list global config to create an entry in a standard IPv4 access control list. So here on this example, the statement matches any address that starts with 192.168.10, and it used the remark option to add a description to your ACL so that you remember what it is that you're wanting to do. It's always a good idea. Now step 2, you're going to use the interface configuration command to select an interface to apply that ACL. So on this one I want it to go to serial 000. So I'm going to say interface serial 000, and then I'm going to tell it IP access group 1 out, because my access group is my access list 1 that I did the permit on. Okay, so far we've shown you the ACLs as numbered. And keep in mind that if you have the more current iOS for your router, you can use named ACLs. And it makes it easier to understand some of the functions of that particular ACL. An example there would be if you've configured your deny statement for FTP, you may call your access control list no FTP. And that way you know what that ACL is going to do. Now what we would do for this is that you would start out with your global configuration mode, and you would use the IP access list command to create a name. So we would do IP list, then you would state whether it's going to be standard or extended, and then you would give it its name. Once you've done this, you're now in the named ACL configuration mode, and you're going to use it to permit or deny and put those statements in there. So permit or deny, and then the source and the source wildcard. And you may also choose to select log so that it's logging your information. Then you're going to apply the ACL to your interface. Remember, you have to put it on the interface itself in order for it to accept it. Now keep in mind that when you name your ACLs, to capitalize them, it's not required. It just makes it easier. They stand out a little bit better. So anything to make your life easier, why not do it? So do the capitalizations. Here you see the actual configuration. They've done the IP access list. It is a standard one, and this one is allowing no access. So then you see that it says deny host, and it gives the host address, and then it says permit any, which is going to allow it to permit anything else other than that host. Then they've exited out, they've gone into the interface that they want to apply it to, and they do the IP access group no access out. Now one thing you do need to keep in mind is it is case sensitive, so if you name it all uppercase when you do the IP access list standard and you do it all uppercase, when you go in and assign it to that interface, it has to match. It has to also be in uppercase. You can't do it in lowercase because that's two different access lists. Okay, now that we've set up our ACLs, you may need to edit your numbered ACLs. It just tends to happen. You've either keyed something in wrong, or you need things to function in a different way than you keyed them in. You can either do that by method 1 using a text editor, or by method 2 using the sequence number. So with method 1 using your text editor, there's several things you need to do. First step is to display the ACL using your show run config. Okay, you can do the pipe and just show it at the include with the access list that you want to see. Your next step is you're going to highlight the ACL, copy it, paste it into Notepad. You're going to edit the list as required, and then after the ACL is correctly displayed on your Notepad, you're going to highlight it and copy it. Your third step is you're going to go into global config mode. You're going to remove the access list using the no access list, and then the number of the access list that you're getting rid of. Then you're going to paste the new ACL into the configuration of the router. Okay, so you've copied it into your Notepad, you've made your changes, now you're going to copy it from your Notepad, you're going to remove the access list from your router config, and then you're going to paste in the new changes. Okay, then you're going to use your show run again to verify that you made the changes that you needed to make. Now if you use this method, it's a good practice, just get used to doing it. What you need to do first is you need to go in and remove the reference to it from your interface so that there's not also a listing for it out there. So do that first. Then you go in and make your changes, and then you can go back and put it back to that interface. Now our second method is using the sequence number. Let's say that you've created your access list. You did a deny statement for a host and you keyed in the wrong IP address. Okay, in order to get that one removed, the steps you're going to do is you're going to display the current ACL using your show access list and the list number, and that's going to show you the order which it's going. In the example here, it shows you that 10 is a deny statement, 20 is a permit statement, and your 10, your deny, is the one that you keyed the wrong IP address in for. So you're going to enter the IP access list standard command. So you're going to do IP access list standard 1 because that's the list you're wanting to work on. You're going to tell it no 10, which is referencing that sequence number. So it takes out that 10 deny 192, 168, 1099 in this example. And then you're going to key it in again as 10 deny host with the corrected IP address, and then end. Then you're going to show your access list again to make sure that you've got the correct IP address listed. You can modify your named ACLs with your sequence number as well. Besides going in and doing a no statement to remove one, you can add another deny statement if you need to. You just have to get your sequence numbers in between your first deny and your permit. So this can also be done. One of the show commands that's going to come in handy with your ACLs is you can do the show access list. And this example here is showing you the standard access list 1. Some of the information you can gather from that is it's going to show you the matches that have been incremented using this ACL. You can also issue the command clear access list 1 counters, and then you can do your show access list again, and you'll see that the counts are missing from there. So that is one of the ways that you can use the show commands, is to see how things are working for you. Now, keeping with the theme that your ACLs can keep things secure as part of your security practice, remember that we recommend using SSH to do your administration for your routers. However, if that's not available to you and you only have the VTY access, you're going to want to restrict that. And the way you're going to do this is you're going to do this with your ACL and an access class statement that you've configured on those VTY lines. So when you go in and you do your line VTY04, you typically do your login local. Next, you're going to do transport input SSH because that's what we prefer to do. So that's the way we're going to do it. Then you're going to give it an access class and then give it a number, and you're going to tell it that that's allowed in. At that point, you type exit and you're back to your config mode. You're going to config your access list. So access list 21 goes with access class 21. You give it its permit statement. So anything on this example that's coming in on the 192.168.10.0 network is going to be permitted, and anything else is going to be denied. So only people with these IP addresses are going to be allowed through the SSH for the VTY lines. Also keep in mind that it doesn't have to be a numbered ACL. It can also be named, and it works the same. Now, once you configure the VTY lines and you've created this ACL on them, you can do the show access list, and you'll see that on your router side. You need to test it to make sure that it's going to work. So you'll go to your PCs and you'll attempt to do an SSH into that router, and you should see that it works. You're going to try it from PCs on different networks and make sure that only the network you've given access to that router is able to do an SSH telnet into that router.